Picture this. You are kneeling on cool alabaster tiles, the scent of burnt myrrh and crushed lotus petals suffocating the air. It is midnight along the Nile, sometime in the reign of Ramses the Great. Heavy columns cast shadows that writhe like serpents across the sanctuary floor. The voices of priests murmur in a language no outsider is meant to understand. Your wrists tremble as they're tied with braided linen, each knot cinched tight by a hand that never hesitates. Torchlight flickers across the painted eyes of the gods staring down from the temple walls, their gazes unblinking, ancient, and pitiless. You are not a supplicant here. You are the instrument and the victim of a ceremony that promises to upend the very soul of your enemy. You can taste the metal tang of fear behind your teeth. It's not just the threat of violence that terrifies you, but the knowledge that what is about to be done will not end when the night is over. Somewhere in the city, your rival sleeps peacefully, unaware that by dawn, their body, mind, and future will be invaded, violated, without a single blade drawn. This isn't the magic of harmless amulets or luck-bringing charms. This is a ritual that reaches through flesh, spirit, and fate, binding its target with a force older than the pharaohs themselves. The priest's hands move with practiced certainty as they scatter grains of barley and trace forbidden symbols in honey on your bare skin. Every whispered word hisses like the venom of a cobra. You are not the only one who has passed through this darkness. Hundreds, thousands before you have been bound, not for their own sake, but as living conduits in an act of weaponized intimacy. The walls of this temple have watched as nobles, scribes, and slaves alike became unwilling participants in the silent war that rages beneath Egypt's golden mask. There is no comfort in numbers. The echoes of their terror seem to crawl beneath your skin, promising that whatever happens here will follow you long after the ritual ends. But what you don't know yet is this. Tonight is not merely a punishment or a curse. It is an act of power. Every tremor in your limbs, every sacred word uttered will be harnessed to destroy someone you have never touched. You are about to become the blade, the wound, and the blood, without leaving a mark on your own body. By sunrise, your enemy will awaken to a world that has shifted under their feet, their strength stolen, their mind haunted by images and desires not their own. You will walk free from this place, but a part of you will remain eternally entangled with the fate of another. Think ancient Egypt was all pyramids, sun gods, and grand processions? Think again. The world you've been taught to admire, its dazzling monuments, its gilded dynasties, was underpinned by a system so unhinged it makes modern conspiracy look childish. Beneath every triumphal mural and every hymn to the gods, there thrived a network of magical warfare so twisted it would make your skin crawl. Forget tales of harmless love spells or charms to ease the afterlife. The truth is, sexuality in Egypt was a weapon, sharpened by centuries of ritual, wielded not just in the bedroom, but in the throne room, the law court, the battlefield. When a priest invoked the gods with offerings of oil and incense, what followed was rarely mercy. Instead, it was often a calculated act of magical violence, aimed at destroying enemies through the most intimate channels imaginable. Everything you thought you knew about Egypt's spiritual world is about to unravel. You might have pictured serene priests chanting beside lotus ponds, or wise women weaving amulets for safe childbirth. But the reality? More than half the surviving magical texts from pharaonic Egypt involve explicit instructions for cursing, binding, or destroying rivals, usually by means so personal they would scandalize even today's tabloids. Imagine learning that the most sacred temples of Amun, Isis, and Heka doubled as arsenals for magical sabotage. The same hands that prepared bodies for eternity also prepared wax figures for ritual defilement. The gods' blessings were weapons for hire, their rituals perfectly legal tools for erasing a rival's strength, memory, or even their ability to love. And the means? Always through the manipulation of sexuality, ritually, symbolically, or in flesh. Here's what makes this world even more disturbing. Nobody was safe. Whether you were a prince or a peasant, a foreign ambassador, or the pharaoh himself, you could be marked for destruction by a spell scribed in the dead of night, sealed with a secret act in the temple's hidden rooms. The more powerful you became, the more elaborate and vicious the magical attacks aimed at you. Magical impotence, forced infatuation, ritual humiliation, dreams that never ended. These were not just nightmares, but standard tactics in a world where politics and sexuality were indistinguishable. The Egyptian belief that the body, soul, and name were inextricably linked made every intimate act a potential battlefield. Imagine waking each day not knowing whether your own desires, your strength, even your sanity, were truly your own, or if they had been replaced by the spellwork of a hidden enemy. Historical records tell us the practice wasn't rare or marginal, it was central. The Papyrus Leiden, a 348 for instance, preserved in the Netherlands, is a complete manual for cursing enemies, including explicit directions for defiling their names and bodies with symbolic acts of sexual magic. The Metternich Stela, a towering basalt monument from the 4th century BCE, details spells for causing madness, impotence, and disgrace through rituals performed in temple sanctuaries. Magicians like Naneferkaptah and priests of Heka wielded such knowledge as both shield and sword, and even the royal court was haunted by accusations of magical seduction or assault. Archaeological evidence confirms that figurines with exaggerated sexual features, often pierced or bound, were buried beneath thresholds and in tombs, each one a silent attack. But here's where it gets truly twisted. The horror of Egyptian sexual magic was not only that it worked through secrecy and shadows, but that it was celebrated as part of the divine order. Ritual violence was considered necessary to maintain the cosmic balance, Mahat. If an enemy threatened the pharaoh's rule, or a rival challenged a priest's authority, it was not just allowed, but required to use every tool, body, voice, sex, and spell to destroy the threat. You lived and died at the whim of a system where your most private self was a battlefield, and your destruction could be accomplished without a single public accusation. So as you kneel in the torch-lit dark, the taste of honey and incense sharp on your tongue, you know this much. The true power of ancient Egypt was never just in its armies or even its gold. It was in the unseen acts, the rituals no monument would ever depict, the moments where desire and destruction became indistinguishable. Tonight, you are the knife, the wound, and the curse, because in Egypt, power was always intimate, and the deadliest weapon was the one no one else could see. You can't breathe. Smoke from burning acacia fills your nose as the priests lead you deeper into the temple. They murmur incantations older than the city itself, each syllable a lash across your nerves. The stone beneath you radiates a bone-deep chill. In this sacred darkness, a new role is thrust upon you. You are to become the living focus for a spell so invasive it will stain both your skin and your soul. All around you, the painted gods look down with serene cruelty. You realize with a sickening clarity that tonight's rite is not an aberration. It is standard, expected, practiced countless times by the highest in the land. The chief priest approaches, his shaven scalp glinting in the flicker of oil lamps. In his hands, he holds a small wax figurine, grotesquely shaped, yet unmistakably human. You watch as he presses a sharp stylus between the legs of the effigy, carving your enemy's name into the soft wax. He smears the wound with a paste of crushed dates and black coal. Then, he hands you a tiny reed stylus. The implication is unmistakable. Tonight, you will participate in the destruction of your rival's potency. Your own breath shudders as you inscribe a curse, commanded to speak the words aloud, to make the magic real. Your voice shakes as you repeat the invocation. Let his body weaken, let his longing burn, let his seed dry up. The words taste bitter. The ritual is not some forgotten superstition. The priests believe it. So do the powerful men and women who commission these spells. Your father, your rivals, your king. According to documents like the Papyrus Louvre, E3229, and the Chester Beatty Papyri, these spells were standard tools of power. Papyrus instructions detail the preparation of impotence wax, the burial of bound figurines beneath thresholds, the painting of enemies' names on the soles of sandals to be trodden underfoot. You are not witnessing an exception. You are living the rule. But here's where the horror begins to escalate. The ritual you enact tonight is only the first, most basic form of sexual magic. In the archives of Karnak and Saqqara, archaeologists have found hundreds of wax and clay dolls, some bearing nails driven through the groin or heart, others bound in miniature linen bandages soaked in oil and menstrual blood. These were no mere folk superstitions. They were commissioned by priests, generals, and queens. Even the great Ramesses III, facing conspirators from within his harem, is documented in the judicial papyrus as having his enemies' names mutilated and cursed, their manhood symbolically cut away in the hope that the ritual would become reality. But it's not just the threat of impotence or loss of love that hangs over your head. You learn quickly that the most insidious magic is not the one that kills, but the one that humiliates. Imagine waking to discover your body no longer responds as it should, your desires twisted, your dreams invaded by obscene visions. Imagine being a respected official and suddenly every night you dream of humiliating yourself before the entire court. Imagine the whispers, the rumors, the slow erosion of your reputation as those in power quietly direct the full force of the priesthood against your soul. These nightmares aren't imagined. Documents from the Papyrus Harris 501 detail spells meant to shame a man before his house, to turn his wife against him, to make him cry out in madness at night. This is where Egyptian sexual magic makes modern ideas of blackmail seem almost innocent. The spells are precise, almost bureaucratic. Take the wax of a virgin bee, form a likeness of the enemy, drive a nail of bronze through his privates, and bury it at the crossroads beneath the light of Sirius. The instructions read like legal contracts. You understand now. Nothing in this world is left to chance. Every human weakness, desire, shame, jealousy, longing, is an avenue for attack. But here's where it gets even more twisted. The power of these spells is not limited to the priesthood. Ordinary citizens, desperate lovers, jealous rivals, anyone with coin or favor could commission a curse. The Papyrus London 10,092 details a young woman named Tamutamwia, who paid for a ritual to render her rival barren and obsessed, ensuring her own place in her lover's bed. The record survives in a scribe's careful hand, with every ingredient, oil, myrrh, a drop of menstrual blood, listed and costed. The democratization of magic means you are never safe. Anyone, for any reason, might become the target. Historical accounts show that magic was the true equalizer in ancient Egypt. Archaeologist Geraldine Pinch's research reveals that more than half the magical texts found in tombs and rubbish heaps are not for healing, but for harm, always focusing on the intimate, the personal, the sexual. The arsenal includes love spells that bind a victim's will, curses to force dreams of humiliation, even elaborate rituals designed to make men forget the faces of their wives and hunger only for dust. The goal is rarely death. The true horror lies in living with the consequences, becoming a public spectacle, your downfall and entertainment for the very priests who orchestrated your fate. You try not to think of the stories whispered in the temple halls. How the daughter of a vizier was rendered mad with longing for a priest who despised her. How the pharaoh's scribe was found raving in the street after a rival cursed his sleep. You try not to think about the next step. How the priests, now that the effigy is prepared, will seal the curse with a ritual act that is both obscene and terrifying. It is always sexual, always humiliating, always meant to bind the victim so completely that even the gods must watch. But you can't look away, because the worst is still coming. Your hands are guided. Your voice cracks as you speak the final words. The wax figure is placed on the altar, its legs forced apart, and a final curse is whispered. May his love turn to dust, his house to shadow, his line to ash. In that moment, you understand that nothing in Egypt is sacred. Not the body, not the soul, not even love itself. Everything is a weapon, and every weapon leaves scars. Right now, you can feel the weight of these revelations, the sickening sense that history has been lying to you all along. If you want to continue uncovering the buried truths behind Egypt's golden facade, if you want to see what the priests never wanted the world to remember, subscribe now. This is just the beginning of your descent into the hidden machinery of power. The next revelations will make even this night seem merciful. The priests gather the remnants of wax and linen, the flickering lamps casting monstrous shadows on the walls. Somewhere beyond the temple, your enemy sleeps. But soon, they will awaken to a world where their own flesh is their prison, a world shaped not by steel or stone, but by the twisted will of those who understand how to wield sexuality as the ultimate weapon. You step out into the Nile night, but the temple's darkness will follow you home. The worst is yet to come. You do not sleep that night. Not truly. Every time your eyelids drift shut, your mind replays the ritual. The hot wax, the sticky blood, the echo of your own voice cursing a man you once called friend. You wonder if he feels it already. a tightening in his chest, a confusion in his thoughts, a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread. Dawn on the Nile is beautiful, but nothing in this new world feels innocent. You are changed, marked, and your role is far from over. Morning brings you to a different chamber, colder, larger, the air heavy with incense and the bitter tang of old sweat. Here, magic is not the secret trait of priests and desperate lovers. Here, sexual magic is an instrument of the state, wielded with the precision of a blade. You stand among the court scribes, forced to copy out records of spells and accusations. Papyrus scrolls line the walls, each one a record of the kingdom's hidden wars. This is where you see the truth laid bare. Egyptian power is not simply held by armies or laws, but by the calculated destruction of reputation, desire, and even sanity. A senior priest beckons you forward, his eyes flat as river stones. He recites the charges against a foreign ambassador, a real man with a real family, accused of speaking treason at a banquet. The court must answer with a demonstration of power, he says. That answer is not a sword or an execution. Instead, it is a spell of ritual sexual humiliation, designed not to kill, but to destroy. You are told to prepare a new wax figure, this one with the ambassador's name etched deep into the chest. With each step, the process grows more elaborate. Herbs ground into sticky pastes, a feather from a sacred ibis, and strands of black hair coiled around the effigy's waist. As the priests chant, you learn the order of operations by heart. First, the figure is defiled with an obscene gesture, its mouth stopped with a sliver of dried fish. So shall his words be silenced, the priest intones. Next, the figure is bent double, its hands bound behind its back. You are ordered to drive a bronze pin through its groin, while the room watches in tense silence. The pain you inflict is meant to be psychic, not physical, but the effect is the same. The ambassador will soon find his body betraying him in front of the court. He will stammer, forget his own name, dream of humiliating acts, lose the respect of his peers. The Papyrus Leiden. I-348 details every step of this process, preserved across centuries as proof that Egypt made nightmares real. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. These rituals are not just for show. They are spectacles, attended by high officials, scribes, and the curious elite. When the spell is complete, a feast is held. The story of the ambassador's downfall becomes gossip, entertainment, a warning. The Metternich Stela, a monument that survives to this day, records the prosecution of a group of enemies of the state through spells of impotence, public shame, and forced isolation. The priests recount these stories proudly. A rival prince reduced to tears in the throne room, a general haunted by nightmares of sexual disgrace until he renounces his command. Each act is a lesson. Power in Egypt is total, and no one's body is private. What you begin to understand is that the horror is not just in the act, but in its normalization. The palace keeps detailed records. Every curse, every failed marriage, every descent into madness attributed to the rituals of protection. The bureaucratic machinery is as polished as the pharaoh's court. The priests have formulas for every occasion. To silence a traitor, to humble the proud, to render a rival powerless in love. Their language is clinical, almost casual. For a man who offends the king, let his desire be his undoing. Let him be mocked in the house of every woman he covets. Let his nights be filled with longing and his days with shame. But here's where it gets truly twisted. You discover that the most important rituals are performed not in secret, but in public, at the very heart of Egyptian power. On certain festival days, crowds are gathered. The priests lead out condemned enemies, their heads shaved, their bodies daubed with painted curses. The court gathers as the high priest reads out their crimes. Then, before the assembly, the condemned are forced to enact humiliating rituals, mock couplings with effigies, symbolic marriages to animals or inanimate objects, all while chants fill the air. These ceremonies are meant to destroy utterly, leaving the victim not merely broken, but unfit for the afterlife, a fate worse than death for any Egyptian. The Chronicle of Setna Kamwas records such an event. A rival priest, publicly stripped and mocked, forced to recite his own downfall while the people jeered. His family was shamed for generations, his tomb defaced, his name erased from the book of life. Still, you notice something more chilling. The priests are never satisfied with mere humiliation. Every ritual ends with the destruction of the effigy, burned, buried, drowned in the Nile. But the aftershocks linger. You hear the courtiers whisper, "The ambassador has stopped attending banquets. The general's wife has left him. The rival priest was last seen wandering the necropolis, raving and naked." These are not just rumors. The records are clear, the names preserved. Hori, son of Panahesi, cursed by the priests of Memphis, vanished from all official documents after being accused of nightly offenses. The judicial papyrus of Ramesses III recounts the fates of conspirators against the throne. Their manhood was bound, their names broken, their seed cast out from Egypt. The threat is universal. You see that the court is always watching, always taking notes. A scribe who angers the wrong priest may find his own marriage collapsing, his children sickening, his name erased from ledgers. Even the pharaoh is not invulnerable. Each year, he must submit to rituals that cleanse him of any magical attack, often through symbolic acts of sexual purification. Failure to perform these rites is unthinkable. The gods themselves demand satisfaction, and anyone who resists is destroyed twice. First in this life, then in the one that follows. But the most sinister revelation is the ease with which cruelty becomes ordinary. You look into the eyes of your fellow scribes, the priests, the nobles, and you see no shock, no sympathy. This is the way things are done. And as you dip your pen to record yet another name, another curse, another ritual of defilement, you realize the true terror. You have become part of the machine. In Egypt, there is no refuge, no innocence, no way out, only the endless, methodical weaponization of the human soul. Somewhere in the city, another victim stirs uneasily in their sleep. The palace prepares the next effigy, the next accusation, the next public spectacle. You can feel the current of fear that runs beneath the surface of every conversation, every banquet, every morning prayer. Power here is absolute, and its favorite tool is humiliation. What you don't know yet is that the greatest horror is still waiting. And soon, you will find yourself not merely a witness, but a target. You learn to hide your fear behind the mask of a dutiful scribe, but nothing can shield you from what the palace asks of you next. The order comes quietly, slipped between stacks of papyri. You are to assist in the most severe ritual yet, a public act of magical annihilation against a foreign adversary, the kind whispered about in the alleys of Thebes for generations. You steady your hands, but your heart hammers as you descend once more into the sanctum, where power is not merely displayed, but wielded with surgical cruelty. Tonight's ritual is different. The victim is not an absent rival or a whispering courtier. He is here, alive, forced to kneel naked beneath the painted eyes of the gods and the cool gaze of the pharaoh's inner circle. His name is spoken aloud. Sheshonq, ambassador of Cush, accused of plotting against Egypt's order. This is no mere accusation. It is a death sentence disguised as a ritual, a public stripping not just of dignity, but of lineage, name, and hope for eternity. You stand at the edge of the circle holding the wax effigy shaped crudely in his image. Grotesquely exaggerated, genitals marked in bright ochre, every feature designed to mock and defile. The high priest intones the charges, while attendants douse Sheshonq with oil and black pigment, painting obscene symbols across his chest and groin. Every brushstroke is a curse. Let his house be empty, his seed be dust, his sons be forgotten in the fields. The assembled elite watch in silence, the only sound the steady drip of oil and the quiet, desperate breaths of the condemned. The wax figure is passed from hand to hand, each official compelled to spit on it, some whispering their own wishes for Sheshonq's demise. You see fear in every face. No one wants to be left out, lest the magic rebound upon them. Now comes the most brutal stage. The priests take the effigy and, before all present, enact a simulated violation. The figure is bent double, its legs forced apart, and a red-hot bronze pin is driven through its groin. Sheshonq is forced to watch, his head held up by two guards as the high priest recites the words from the Book of the Dead. As I break you in this world, so shall you be broken in the Duat. Your manhood is ended, your shadow cast out from Egypt. The scene is not merely symbolic, it is a psychological execution. The ambassador trembles, his dignity erased, his family name poisoned by the spectacle. This is no isolated event. Legal codices from the reign of Ramses III, carved into stone and preserved in the Karnak archives, specify the ritual destruction of enemies' reproductive power as state policy. The priests of Heka, the god of magic, were the architects of these terrors, their names signed to dozens of temple decrees. Let all who conspire against the double crown be unmanned before the gods, even queens and princesses, jealous or threaten commission such rituals. The judicial papyrus recounts how the wives of pharaohs enlisted temple magicians to ensure the sons of rivals would never inherit the throne, their potency snuffed out by night and by spell. But here's where the horror deepens. What's done in the temple is not enough. The city is made to bear witness. Sheshonq, still slick with oil and pigment, is paraded through the streets by torchlight. Children jeer, old women spit, the powerful avert their eyes. Behind him, acolytes scatter pieces of the broken effigy, a trail of impotence and ruin. At every crossroads, the procession halts. Another priest reads out a curse. May his house rot, may his wives be barren, may his sons forget his name. The foreigner is not only destroyed, he is made an example. Anyone, from the greatest general to the lowest scribe, can see that power here is enforced not only by the sword, but by the control of flesh and future. You walk behind the procession, feeling the dread seep into your bones. You remember the stories, how conspirators against Ramses III were unmanned not just in body, but in memory. Their names scratched from every record, their descendants forbidden burial. You recall the Metternich Stela's catalog of punishments, curses that condemned whole families to madness, infertility, and disgrace for generations. Egypt's magic is not gentle, nor is it ashamed. The laws themselves are shaped around these rituals. Temple records detail lists of enemies subjected to cutting of the name, binding of the manhood, turning of the desire to ash. The cycle is endless, systematic, justified as the defense of Ma'at, the cosmic order. And yet, what you witness is not justice, but a machinery of terror. The priests do not look away. The pharaoh's officials do not protest. Society itself accepts that this is how security is maintained, through the public destruction of the intimate self. You see, for the first time, how deep the fear runs. The city's peace is purchased at the price of public humiliation, of nightmares that outlive the condemned. No one can stand outside this system. The next victim might be a foreigner, but tomorrow it could be a prince, a general, a lover who spoke too freely in the wrong courtyard. Still, the spectacle is not yet complete. At the temple's gates, the remnants of the effigy are gathered in a basket, splashed with animal blood, and burned as the crowd chants. Shishonk, broken and weeping, is finally released into exile. No one touches him. His shadow lingers on the stones. His name, once spoken in the royal court, will now be a curse whispered only in fear. The ritual is over, but the lesson is permanent. In Egypt, the threat of sexual magic is total, and no one, not even the innocent, can be sure they will not one day find themselves at the center of this darkness. The crowd disperses. The torches gutter out. You return to the sanctuary, sick with what you have seen, but the records must still be kept. Each name, each curse, each humiliation is entered into the archives, testimony to a society that has made intimacy the raw material of terror. As you dip your pen into the ink, you hear the next case being prepared. The law will demand a new victim. And if tonight you are only a witness, tomorrow you may be asked to play a different role. But what you do not yet realize is that this ritual is not merely for foreigners or traitors. The machinery grinds on, hungry, ready to consume anyone who attracts the envy, the suspicion, or the ambition of those who serve the pharaoh's will. In Egypt, even the gods demand a sacrifice of shame. You spend your days transcribing horrors, convinced you can keep yourself invisible, safely anonymous behind your stylus and wax tablets. But Egypt's rituals never forget. Power is hungry, and fear breeds suspicion. One afternoon, you are summoned by a palace official. No explanation, no accusation, just a wordless gesture that brooks no refusal. The walls close in as you are led not to the archives, but to the temple's inner precinct, the very place you have witnessed so many others destroyed. It is dusk. The priests stand in a semicircle, faces hidden in shadow. The chief priest recites a formula. Let the one who sows doubt reap the whirlwind. Your own name is spoken, echoing off the limestone. You realize with cold certainty that you have become the next target. Your mind races for an explanation. Was it a careless word? A mistranscribed line, a glance held too long in the wrong corridor. It doesn't matter. The machinery has found you, and now the weight of centuries bears down on your chest. They strip you of your linen tunic and lead you before the assembled officials. Oil is poured down your back, cold and viscous, trailing over your skin as the priests paint symbols along your spine, across your thighs, around your navel. Each glyph is a spell of unmaking, a command that your body and soul be unraveled. You are forced to kneel on bare stone, the surface gritty and pitiless beneath your knees. The head scribe steps forward, and as you once did to others, inscribes your name onto a clay effigy, shaping its sex with an almost loving care. The room is silent except for the scratching of the stylus and the soft rhythm of your own breath, shallow with dread. The ritual begins. It is meant to humiliate, to unmake your identity in front of all who matter. You are forced to speak confessions you never made, desires you never had, each word a public erasure of your dignity. The effigy is pressed to your body as the priests intone, "Let his will be like dust. Let his longing be his ruin. Let his house forget his name." They spit on the clay figure, drive a sharpened reed through its groin, and bind it with coarse linen. The pain is not physical, but it is real. A suffocation of self, a stripping not only of status, but of memory and hope. You watch through stinging eyes as your name is written onto tablets that will be read aloud in the marketplace. The penalty is not execution, but exile, a living death. You are forced to walk through the city as the sun sets, your body streaked with oil and ochre, the effigy dangling from your neck. Children follow, mocking, and your former friends avert their eyes, afraid the curse might leap from you to them. At every street corner, a temple acolyte recites another curse, not just against you, but against your family, your ancestors, your descendants. May his children forget his face. May his kin cast him out. May the gods close every gate to his spirit. The crowds jeer, but beneath the laughter, you sense terror. Each onlooker wonders if they too could be chosen next, if a single misstep might end in their own public unmaking. You remember the names in the records? The scribe Painfur, accused of secret ambitions, the merchant's wife Isetnefret, marked as a witch, the vizier's cousin, rumored to have angered a priest with an ill-timed jest, all of them erased, not with violence, but with ritual, humiliation, and the destruction of their intimate selves. The machinery grinds on, its gears oiled with fear and shame. You stumble back to the temple, your feet raw and your mouth dry. The priests gather for the final act. The clay effigy is buried beneath the temple floor, sealed with a curse. Let no memory remain but his disgrace. The elders pour oil over the spot, then lead you out into the night, your exile complete. The lesson is clear. No one, not even those who serve, can escape the cycle. The threat is always present, woven into every conversation, every glance, every silence. There is no safe harbor. There is only the certainty that, should you falter, the rituals you once recorded will be turned against you. Society has learned to accept this terror. The market traders gossip about the latest victim as they weigh out grain. The soldiers laugh over cups of beer about whose turn it will be next. Even the innocent, children, spouses, old women, learn to guard their words, to watch their backs, to fear the priest's summons in the night. The very mechanisms of power have normalized these horrors. The law requires public humiliation. The temples keep lists of the shamed. Ritual shame becomes a kind of currency. To survive, you must sometimes join the chorus, cursing others to save yourself. Yet you know, as you walk into your enforced obscurity, that the system can never truly cleanse itself. The dread seeps into the city's bones, haunting every festival and family gathering. The Pharaoh's peace is built on the ruins of countless lives, undone not by war or famine, but by the public weaponization of intimacy. You have seen how easy it is for accusation to become fact, for ritual to become execution, for shame to become law. The machinery is relentless, but the stories of the erased persist. In stolen glances, in whispered warnings, in the uneasy sleep of every soul who dreams of a world where the worst punishment is not death, but to be forgotten in shame. You understand now. In Egypt, the greatest terror is not the sword, nor the executioner's block, but the certainty that even the most private part of you, your longing, your reputation, your memory, can be made a spectacle, a lesson, a weapon for those who hold power. And as the Nile wind cools the sweat on your skin, you feel the machinery grinding on, already hungry for its next offering. The ritual is complete, but the cycle is endless. The darkest secrets are never buried deep enough. Night in Egypt is never silent. Even in exile, you hear the echo of chanting drifting from distant temples, the voices of priests shaping fate with every syllable. The scars of your own ritual humiliation throb beneath your skin. But the true horror lies in what you are forced to witness next. Word spreads through the city. Another trial, another victim, this time at the very summit of Egyptian society. The pharaoh's most trusted general stands accused of secret treason. You slip into the crowd, half-shrouded, hiding your ruined name, desperate not to be seen, but unable to turn away. The city holds its breath as the procession moves through torch-lit streets. The general is dragged before the assembled priests and royal court, his armor stripped away, his body daubed with oil and black pigment. His children are made to stand in the front row. He tries to speak, but a temple acolyte smears his lips with honey and dust. Ritual silence. This is not just a punishment. It is a total erasure. The chief priest recites the accusations, but no one cares about evidence. The only proof needed is fear. In the center of the courtyard stands a massive effigy, crudely formed in the general's likeness, but monstrous in every proportion. Before all eyes, the priests enact the ultimate sexual curse. They drive iron pins through the groin and mouth of the effigy, bind its hands behind its back, and daub it with menstrual blood and animal fat. Then the general himself is forced to touch the figure, his hands shaking, his dignity shattered, while the court jeers. His sons turn away, ashamed. The general collapses, sobbing, as the chief priest intones the final words, "Let your name rot. Let your body betray you. Let your descendants flee from your memory." The crowd watches in hungry silence, knowing the curse will cling, not just to this man, but to his entire line. This is the climax of Egyptian sexual magic, a ritualized destruction designed not merely to kill, but to unmake, to erase. No one, not even the most powerful, is immune. The palace records the general's name, adds it to the list of those forbidden burial, whose ghosts will wander restlessly between the worlds. The effigy is burned, the ashes scattered into the Nile. The pharaoh gives a signal. The court disperses. No one will ever speak the general's name again. You walk away, trembling, heart sick with what you have seen. In Egypt, the system is total, the mechanisms of control invisible but absolute. From the harem conspiracy against Ramses III, where the king's own wives and magicians tried to use ritual to unman and dethrone him, only to be destroyed by counter-curses, to the judicial papyrus listing the obliteration of dozens of royal enemies. History is full of such erasures. The machinery never rests. Each public ritual etches new scars into the city's memory, each victim a warning to every onlooker. You remember the Metternich Stela's catalog of spells. Not for healing, but for ruin. Not for love, but for shame. The law of Egypt is written not only in stone, but in the broken spirits of its people. Yet when the horror finally ends, when the crowd disperses, the temple doors are barred, and the city returns to its uneasy peace, you are left with the knowledge that these rituals have not simply protected Egypt's order. They have reshaped its soul. The machinery of magical terror has become the engine of society itself. You see it in the silences of the market, the anxious glances between neighbors, the careful obedience of even the most powerful. The worst scars are invisible, handed down from generation to generation, as every Egyptian learns that the greatest threat is not from enemies abroad, but from those closest to home. What echoes forward is not just the destruction of individuals, but the normalization of psychological warfare. You see the pattern? Ritual shame used as a tool of law, public intimacy twisted into spectacle, the very foundation of family and lineage broken by fear. The same machinery of humiliation and magical threat that once guarded the pharaoh's rule seeps into every corner of society. Even after the old gods are forgotten, the instinct remains. The urge to destroy reputations, to weaponize the private self, to maintain power not only through force, but through the terror of being unmade. Now, as dawn breaks and the Nile glows gold once more, you stand changed. You have survived Egypt's darkest rituals, seen how sexuality and magic were fused into a system of control so subtle, so total, that no one was truly safe. The horror was never about simple cruelty. It was about the transformation of intimacy into law, shame into statecraft, fear into the air that everyone must breathe. You came into this story thinking of Egypt as a land of wonders, pyramids, pharaohs, sun gods shining over perfect order. Now you leave understanding that beneath every monument lies a history of rituals designed not to bless, but to terrify. If witnessing these hidden mechanisms has awakened your curiosity for what power really means, subscribe now. This channel will keep revealing the truths that ancient empires tried to bury. The realities of control, terror, and survival that shaped every civilization worth remembering. The secrets of Egypt's sexual magic are not dead. They live on, in every shadowed corridor of history where power fears being challenged, and where the most personal becomes the most dangerous. If you're ready to keep pulling back the veil, you know where to find the next chapter.